Coming at you today, this is Cappy. This is the 14th podcast. Today's September 19th, 2016. And one of the things I wanted to talk about today, amongst others, is, I guess the word change. It's a scary word for a lot of people in every walk of life, but, pertaining to baseball players, youth, mid-level, high school, college, professionals, all the way to the top, change is not something that we easily accept as ball players. And, I've experienced it. Many players have experienced it at some point in their career where it was very hard for them to accept change, or more importantly, their own willingness to change. So what got me on this subject is thinking, basically seeing players that if they have any chance to succeed either the following year or at the next level throughout their career, they have to make changes. You see it in major leaguers, you see it in college, high school, and you see it at the youth level, obviously. But, if it's not accepted within the player and they're not surrounded by someone that can help them endure a change in, say, their swing or fielding or throwing or running or fitness, strength, conditioning, academics, whatever the case is, as a complete ball player moving forward in their careers, if something is just broke and not working and you're not getting the results that you strive for, maybe it is time for a change. Now, there's a couple ingredients, mainly two, that you need, in my opinion, to make this work for you. Number one, the individual has to be willing. You have to be willing to put your ego aside. You have to be willing to experiment and put yourself in difficult situations, physically and mentally. You're going to doubt yourself early on when you're taking on a change in your game. You have to be willing to pursue it tirelessly. The second ingredient is professional help or expert help or a master, teacher, trainer, mentor that's in your world that you can tap into, that understands the developmental process and can work with you to get you through it. Because it's a physical and a mental thing. It's not just popping in, taking a lesson with somebody or listening to somebody, what I'm doing right now, putting it out there, right? But it's a long-term, it's a process that you're always working on, to be willing to change your game and make the necessary fixes that's going to help you better your career and move forward. A couple things have motivated me to has put this thought into my brain and want me to talk about it. And again, it's not easy to talk about, changes to your game. And again, I'm basically referring to a hitter with their approach or their swing or, their mental outlook on their approach, what they're trying to do. But what sparked this was watching guys, let's just take at the highest level, the major league level, who are obviously under a lot of pressure to perform, making extremely huge sums of money, being pulled at by several different people probably, and struggling mightily, not performing anywhere near their capabilities because of a lot of these outside influences. And because of misdirection, not knowing where to turn, who to accept advice from, who to go to. And maybe one of the most common mistakes, I was guilty of it as a player as well, is feeling that you can dig yourself out of the hole yourself with no help or no change in mental outlook, no change in the form of your training, physical and mentally, no change in the form of your teachers or mentors or masters that you surround yourself. And that's a big problem when someone's not willing to shake it up. In sport, we see this all the time, whether it's an owner of a club or a general manager of a club. No one wants to repeat the same mistakes over and over and over. And it could last 5 years, 10 years. It could last 30 years with an organization. With a player, an individual player, it can last 1 year, 2 years, or the rest of your career, and it's going to get cut short by the lack of your ability to make change. If you are struggling mightily and you are having a terrible week, month, year, season with your results, it's not going to change if you don't do something about it. If you continue to spin your wheels and just think miraculously you're going to come out of this thing by repeating the same things you've previously done, it's not likely to happen. We don't see it happen. You know, we watch it on television, we see the highlights, but we don't hear the background of a lot of these players that have revitalized their career or made changes and gotten themselves to the next level. You know, that's something the public doesn't hear or see, the hours they've put into making adjustments that might not even be visible to the human eye when they're watching an at-bat on TV or not. So we've talked a little bit about that example at the major league level. We all know it. We see it. The people that follow baseball, insiders, it seems like everybody knows it but the individual player sometimes, right? So if there's a drastic wrong, that's kind of what I titled this episode. Drastic wrongs deserve drastic changes. Okay, if you're drastically struggling at a facet of the game, and again, this could spill over into your physical fitness, conditioning, strength, speed. It could trickle over to your personal life, how you handle yourself off the field. But more importantly, what I'm talking about right now is your results and the changes that are needed. I prefer the word adjustment. It doesn't sound so harsh, and when I teach and train, I always talk about adjustments. But adjustments hint more along the lines of little changes or small adjustments that hitters in general or baseball players are making their whole careers. But what I'm talking about right now is the word change, that what you're doing is not working. And if your opponents are going to keep exposing you for this and you're unwilling to make a change, then that's exactly what's going to happen. You're going to be exposed and your results will not be where you want them, and ultimately from there it becomes the end of the road. Your career is shortened. You don't make and for those at the highest level making a ton of money, it's not fun when people start booing you. And essentially, everybody wants to run you out of town, or you're the butt of a joke, or whatnot. And there's a lot of guys that are at that level. What I'm talking about. So as it trickles down into, say, somebody, their youth baseball career, there's some drastic problems with younger players' performance on the field as well. And my point of this is being able to recognize that, and then, as we know in life, changes are easier made. They tend to be easier made at an earlier age or when someone's younger, especially physical stuff that we develop, muscle memory and habit developing, motions, say in our swing, throwing, fielding, whatever, running, whatever. So stuff that we're talking about today, it's important to stress at the earlier ages. I see 13, 14-year-olds that have terrible throwing habits, and then when they get in the game, they wonder why they're making all kinds of throwing errors. And then and there's a good example of something. Well, you have to change the way you're throwing the baseball, and you can relate that to, again, hitting, your approach at the plate. For example, if pitch selection is just drastically terrible, that the results are terrible, you're swinging at everything. You're having it hard to even have a clue up there at the plate. You need to address a drastic change in your approach. So, it's kind of like that two-step plan of being willing, having that willingness as a player, put your ego aside. You can't do it all on your own. And that's hard for somebody, especially players that are good. And it's hard a lot of times for someone to transition into little league, to club baseball, to high school, to college, to professional, to the major leagues, where there's always that new competition coming in. Things are under the microscope more. There's scouting reports on everybody. People are more likely to know your weaknesses and get you out. So you're always evolving as a player if you want to continue that development. So bottom line is, and again, it's so difficult because I look back when I was a player, and you have an ego, and to be a professional athlete and at the highest levels, you got to be a little nasty, and you got to have that chip on your shoulder, and don't get me wrong, there's some people, some coaches at higher levels that don't know shit, and they're not in your best interest, and they're not the best people for you to be surrounded with, although you may believe that because you work for a certain organization and you're expected to work with certain people, but that's not the case a lot of times either. So it takes an individual to let their guard down, go out and seek the instruction, the help they need, someone that's going to work on them physically and mentally and get the training, the knowledge, the information. I use the term bend somebody's mind. Sometimes an athlete needs to have their mind bended, and it allows you, when you get your mind bent like that, you start to see things in a different light, a different focus, a different approach. And when you have your mind bent like that by somebody, I think that's a good thing. So being able to seek out that person that can best help you. Don't wait, if you struggled and had a terrible season, there's something wrong that needs to be changed. Okay? It's a result-driven sport. You will be judged and graded on your results. If the results aren't there, you need to seek out a change. And sometimes, and it's always a different degree to everybody, sometimes it needs to be a drastic change. What that change is, that's why it's important to find the right person that can help you with that change, because it's going to differ. And I could go on and on about how someone would have to change their game or their approach at the plate, physically, mentally, whatever the case is. But a master teacher, trainer, is going to be able to provide you input and help you with that change if you come to them with your problems. And it goes back to how I always talk to somebody when I first meet them. If I don't have any videotape on them or something, I'll ask them, how do you get out? How do you get out? How are you getting out? And that information right there will help me spit out solutions, and then you have to tinker and you have to experiment. And it's hard to do this because the individual, the player, has to be able to manage the different movements and feel comfortable with them, and has to train mentally with these thoughts, and this process that might be a physical change has to be accepted mentally as well. Repetitions and all this stuff can take place most likely, hopefully, in the off season, when you have 1 to 3 months to really dedicate yourself to a change. It's very hard to make a change in the middle of the season, especially for professionals who are having 500 at bats a year. So evaluate yourself in these different downtimes. Evaluate your performance. Be honest with yourself, and if it means having to bring on a change, then seek out the best person to help you with that, because you probably do need a change. Repeating the same mistakes, I've heard it defined as insanity, or being insane is expecting a different outcome. If you're repeating the same, repeating the same process with the same outcome, you will drive yourself crazy, and you will throw your hands up in the air and say, "What am I doing?" And that's a scary place to be in as a baseball player, where you need that you don't know what you're doing up there. And it sounds kind of almost funny, but there's there's Major League Baseball players that are clueless, and will almost even admit it, where they don't know what they're doing at that time. And that's why help is so important. So seek that help out. Don't be afraid to change, whatever that change is, but it's a combination between you, yourself, the player, and who you're going to turn to and find that advice, that help, that person that can be with you for an extended period of time, that 1 to 3 months in the off season, and you can bang out good changes that are going to benefit and help your results and extend your career. That's what it's all about. So don't think you can do it all by yourself. And be open-minded about things. And don't be afraid of change, because a lot of times that's what's needed. So that's all I got. Thanks for listening. If you get to the YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button. It notifies you when I get new videos up. And go to my Facebook page. And I've been putting up some short little instructional videos as well. That's pretty cool. I'm trying to figure out a better format to kind of get that info out more often and to more people. So if you got any questions or comments, hit me up. Thanks for listening.